It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday. And yeah, we're going to be talking mostly about the Horizon Zero Dawn. I think maybe I will find the words to summarize the whole thing as I go on. I had some really, ultimately very productive, really intense conversations on this issue this week. And what I ended up determining, like broad strokes, is that part of the problem is that culture, as I said on Wellness Wednesday, culture right now is a fucking donut. We hear all this stuff about who is centered in the culture. And the truth is, nobody feels centered in the culture right now. Like I said, unless you're phenomenally wealthy. Nobody feels centered in the culture. Everybody feels marginalized, and everybody feels like they're fighting for their very existence because they feel marginalized in culture. That's much easier to identify as a problem than it is to solve the problem, but it's still super important to recognize the problem. And so, yeah, if you like this sort of stuff, I forgot to fix the Patreon slate, so I'll do it. Help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or you can do the coffee thing. You can donate Leanna Care Sessions. Someone donated 4 this week. One person donated 4 sessions. Those are already booked with people. It was like I had a wait list. I knew exactly. Boom, 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 boom. So thank you to that donor. That's going to help some people out an awful lot. And just talking is powerful. And part of the reason I do these videos, even though I take epic amounts of shit for things, is to have those 3 or 4 really meaningful conversations in a week where I'm like, all right, that's interesting. I continue to believe that a big part of the issue on these things is that people are talking past each other. People need so badly to be heard that no one is listening. And that's why I prefaced this video with the raw wound thinking video on Wellness Wednesday, because I thought it was important to deal with that before, we got into the nuts and bolts issues. And one person, they said they wanted culture as an effing donut on a t-shirt. These are comments from a Wellness Wednesday, and then I will get into the Aloy comments. But I want to preface this with the sort of emotional content, because this stuff unpacks a lot of raw wounds. And I know I finally found the words this week to describe why this bugs the shit out of me. And I'm going to share that while trying to say what I understand about, other people's perspectives. Now, I'm not going to get other people's perspectives perfect, and obviously I can't do every single person's perspective. I'm just, trying to encompass what I learned this week, right? But what one person said is, had a thought, PTS is a scar of badly healed emotional trauma. Wisdom is the results of properly healed trauma. And often the difference between the two is the condition under which the healing took place. That's an interesting analogy. The thing about acute PTS is that someone is actually stuck in the trauma. And I'm seeing a lot of that in comments. Another person said, I'll add that there are a lot of people out there whose wounds aren't only still open and raw, but in situations where they are long-term and ongoing. On top of that, things pile on and prevent the wound from getting a chance to heal properly, if at all. The whole global situation doesn't help, and regular, everyday, random crap didn't stop happening because of it. To try and convert people on any side on any topic of conversation is the wrong approach when talking to someone, and ignores the blindness we have when talking to others. I hope that's clear by now, at least in a somewhat healthy community. This might not make sense, but even to try and understand is to make a judgment, and we should always reserve any kind of final judgment when faced with an individual in a conversation. You don't have to understand completely, at least to actively listen to someone. And yeah, that kind of summarizes the challenge I have with this stuff. And, you know, why I started doing the one-on-one stuff with people, in part because that gives me an opportunity to listen to people instead of having to, you know, make the first step, voice my opinions on something and my views on something and my take on something, and then get yelled at by, you know, 100 people. There's no getting around that. It's the nature of YouTube. It's really not fun sometimes. It can be really, really overwhelming. And I think that's part of the reason I understand why people feel so besieged. And it's complex when you're getting into this depictions of stuff in video games. And this is the piece that I think isn't talked about enough. You can't, for better or worse, we live in a culture where media depictions of men and women is overwhelmingly binary, right? For various reasons. The vast majority of characters, video games, are especially charged this way. And this is what the conversations this week made me realize, that I hadn't really enunciated this effectively. And I'm going to lean on one side of the binary, and I'm really not comfortable with binaries, and it'll come out later in this video why. But when we have a depiction of women, a woman, female character in a game, the way the popular trend in video games, the way video games treats it, the theory that developers subscribe to and players, gamers feel trapped by, is that the design of the female character isn't just a commentary on women. It's a commentary on the presumed male player. And I don't design that way, and I think this is the reason I had trouble with this. When I design a game character, when I design anything for games, it's like, what is the reality of this character, right? Not, is this going to be fat material for men? Because I don't see it as fat material for men. Men are not the only people attracted to women. And it's like, is it majority? And then you get into this, it's like, I don't care. That's not my design process. And this is why I'm not in AAA. I want to create a character that is an interesting character and serves the gameplay function of the game. And I believe that if you create a character that is appropriately suited to what, because I'm a gameplay first designer, even though I'm primarily a narrative designer, if you create a character that is the proper embodiment of the gameplay style you want to teach the player, then they will be embraced by the player. It doesn't matter what their identifiers are, right? Identifiers are just a way of shorthanding what you expect this character to do when you hit the jump button or the kick button or the, whatever. Big characters move slower, smaller characters move faster but cause less damage, right? So on and so forth. So this idea that any female character is not just a commentary on women and the role of women, but the interests and desires of a presumed male player. All right, that seems to be part of the rawness about this, that gamers are responding to what developers appear to think about the people they assume play their games. and the fact that some developers do not seem to have a terribly positive opinion of their primary player base. Interesting. Because that's not where I was coming at it at all. And this is different between people who are getting their opinions primarily through the lens of the press and statements made to the press, and me who, talks to developers like off the record and hear what they don't say in public. And I'm going to start with a story on this to give you a sense of how the way the games press warps that dialogue. And it was I don't remember if it was the first or second time, probably the first, I interviewed Ed Boon. And it was, I think it was DC versus Mortal Kombat that he was promoting. And I'm like, oh my God, huge fan from way back. And, I was so excited, one of my longtime idols. And I was talking to the Warner person because I like to chat up the PR people. Any information I can get while I'm waiting for an interview, I'm going to take that. But I said, I said to the interviewer, yeah, the guy's just gotten so raked over the coals about the whole violence in video games thing. And the Warner PR person just immediately like Iron Giant, their eye goes red. And if you bring that up, we will shut down the interview. I said, I'm not going to criticize him about violence in video games. I'm a supporter of his. Don't bring it up. We will shut down the interview. What did this teach me? Don't believe what you read in the press. The developers are not giving their full opinion because not only are they not being asked the questions that would allow that full opinion because their PR people will shut it down, but even when they are answering questions, even when they are allowed to speak, they are acutely aware that they are being watched. And so we're not getting their authentic opinion in the media. Now, that being said, it eventually came to the point where I couldn't support the Mortal Kombat franchise anymore because of comments in the press and then subsequent behavior by the developer when you're going to Polygon and saying, well, we wanted to make the costumes more respectful. And then you release the original costumes as paid DLC. It's like, and this is for Mortal Kombat 11. It's like, all right, so are you being more respectful with your current costumes and then disrespecting women with the retro pack? There's a contradiction here. Either way, according to these comments and then the actions of the developer, you are being deliberately disrespectful. And I understand because, I had that reaction. And so I understand people who, if there is a particular game where a developer is overtly politicizing it, Mass Effect Andromeda was another one that came up. That was a political agenda, was not my understanding of what actually happened with Andromeda. That was the way it was spun. But I'm not going to bother repeating this because people aren't listening to me. People are, once again, they're primed by comments in the press. They don't have my background of seeing how that's all bullshit. That's part of the reason I stopped doing direct reporting on games, because you can't get an authentic answer from a developer anymore. They're not allowed to. So I would just rather, talk to people off the record and provide what knowledge I can without betraying a confidence, right? And is this fair to anybody? No. And people can believe me or don't want to believe me. Like I said, I'm not going to repeat what happened with Andromeda because people are convinced that that was some sort of overt political thing. And I admit, having played Andromeda, and that one I sort of understand. When Krogans are lecturing me about the environment, stop this game, I want to get off, right? It was just, that game was just a disaster on so many fronts. And I know a lot of people watching this are not going to believe me. And in some way that really hurts, because I know I'm telling the truth, and it doesn't make any sense that I would come here and just make something up whole cloth or whatever. But people are very defensively attached to this narrative that game devs are out to get men and shame men for their desires and rub men's noses in it by giving them deliberately ugly characters. And it's interesting because going back to Mortal Kombat, one of the characters has been brought up, and again, this is just because I'm, by gamer standards and of course, YouTuber standards, and I'm old. I was actually a player when Mortal Kombat 3 came out and Shiva first debuted, and I remember the comments, whoa, she looks like a man, back then, 'cause she was like a female bodybuilder, like, oh, she's really mannish. Like, that was the response back then, and people were like, I can find no record of it. Because everything wasn't put on the internet back then. We had paper magazines, and we talked to each other, and we had fanzines and shit. No, there's no website from when Mortal Kombat 3 came out, guys. There was a world before the internet, right? Give me a break here. So I think it's interesting that people now claim that Shiva's one of those characters that's now deliberately made mannish or ugly and all that stuff. And I'm looking at it, it's like, it looks like the exact same character to me. It's just a 3D render. They made the head more realistic proportions as opposed to that pulled up thing they did. But it's just interesting to have witnessed it firsthand based on, and then the perception. This is the ongoing theme. That witness firsthand public perception based on the media. I watched the warp happen. I watched the skew happen, right? And then, I've said plenty about The Last of Us 2. I am in such a shitty situation with that game because it is still a raw wound. I have not seen a single game cause as much damage to sort of like the collective psyche of gaming as that thing, because that is an example of a game that was legitimately forced down people's throats as some sort of masterpiece. And there's a lot of comments that said, I don't trust Sony because of that. It's Sony. That's why I don't believe Horizon Zero Dawn. It's Sony. They do this. And I'm sitting there thinking, but Sony also released Ghost of Tsushima like 3 weeks later. And that game was awesome. And so, okay. Are we saying Tsushima is the anomaly or The Last of Us 2 is the anomaly? And I would argue The Last of Us 2 is the anomaly because, reasons. Now, we have to go back to, there's a tail wagging the dog phenomenon that's happening in gaming right now, because I talk to developers and they all say, basically we're scared of getting tropes versus women. We're scared of getting told we are sexist. We have families, we have wives, we have kids. They don't want to be the bad dude. And gamers are saying, but you're making us the bad dude. Developers are feeling shamed, so gamers are feeling shamed, and there's this whole cycle, right? And this is where I talk about my own raw wound on this, because I just gave a very somewhat lengthy history of my own direct experiences with the people involved in this stuff. And gaming back in the day. I started gaming in 1981. Okay. I am a gamer. I have been here. I have been here a lot. I have been here longer than a lot of y'all watching this channel. There are some of y'all who've been here longer than me, and I tip my hat to that. Press F to pay respects. But not many. Because, Pong wasn't that long before when I started gaming. Oh, Lord. Infocom days. Mystery House. Yeah, predates me. I don't think so. I think Mystery House was the 80s too. Oh, Lord. Tandy 1000 generation. But I'm sitting here as a long-time gamer. First of all, I'm told I'm too old to count, right? You get that a lot. So there's that. But then I watch this cycle, this circle of life. Male game developer creates a character, and let's face it, the characters we're talking about, Guerrilla Games male creative director, right? Naughty Dog, Neil Druckmann, Mass Effect Andromeda, male creative director, Mortal Kombat, male artistic director, creative director, all that stuff. These are men making the final decisions about these depictions of women. Okay? Female writer on The Last of Us 2. Please, she had no fucking power, guys. Like, the writer has no power. The writer has no power in video games. That's one of the things that really makes me angry. Druckmann threw her under the bus, threw the voice actress under the bus. Laura Bailey got thrown under the bus on that shit. And the female writer got thrown under the bus on that shit. Writers have no fucking power in video games. You show up, the missions are designed, the modules are designed, the character's set. You just put not even the meat on the bones, you put the skin on the muscle. So, we got a female writer. So the fuck what? You just use that woman as a human shield. The decisions are made. Right? That's just fact. Ask any game writer. They don't have any power over the plot. No, they don't. That's narrative designers and mission directors, and no, writers don't have any control over the plot. It's like the joke writer in a late night show. That is fact. Okay, that's fact. Fight me all you want. That's fact. So these are men creating these depictions of women. And in AAA, the assumption is that this is for a primarily male player base. Okay, that's a fair assumption, right? It's AAA. So either the male developer creates spank material, which I still maintain Abby is. Abby is as much a sexual fantasy as Widowmaker from Overwatch, right? Or Tracer or whatever. And that's, the way Abby's depicted in the game with that gratuitous sex scene and all the flexing and everything. That is clear somebody's spank material. I have male friends who are into muscular women. And it's funny because every guy I know who's into muscular women admits they feel a bit weird about it. And this seems so freaking strange to me. And maybe this is just me being out of touch because, I somewhat jokingly perv on people like Megan Thee Stallion, on Twitch. Obviously, that's not normal, shit. I got people dogpiling me for being a chaser, which is a term about, transgender women or people in general. I was like, you called me what? Like, what? A what? And basically they were calling me like a creepy pervert. So I kind of get it. I was like, pardon me? I just don't care. But I get that a lot of people do. I can't force my own level of Gen X apathy on other people because I know that's not millennial socialization. And this is where I had to do some work because getting back to me again, male directors, right? Male creators of these characters, men creating depictions of women that then go out and are written about by predominantly male games press. Again, female character depiction of woman. And then there's a whole debate from a predominantly male fan base about whether the character looks like a man or is ugly or is this and what it all means. But do you notice what's going on here? And this was my raw wound as somebody who, like I said, has been a pretty hardcore fucking gamer since 1981. Men, 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 men. When do people like me get a say here, guys? But this is when it gets deeper. Okay, this is when the wound gets deeper. Because, and men get a lot of contradictory messages in culture too. Don't get me wrong. I'm just talking about my own experiences here. This is not women. This is Leanna. Okay. I don't strictly identify as a woman anyway. But you have this message that you're supposed to be strong. You're supposed to be tough, especially when you were a female games journalist in the fucking 90s. Okay. You had to be tough. We're talking about, Scorpia wrote a review that a game designer didn't write. So he made her an ugly monster in one of his games because he was so pissed that she criticized his game. Like, it was just petty as fuck. Who's Scorpia? Look it up. She's a fucking legend. But you had to be really tough because you took a lot of shit. But you have to choose. Are you feminine or are you tough? Are you nice and understanding and can't get a word in edgewise because everybody steamrolls over you? Or are you mannish in your socializations and get aggressive? Do you dress feminine? Do you dress to be seen? Or do you dress as the dreaded honorary guy? Right now I'm wearing my own fucking merch right now. This is from the modeling I did for Battle Station Specific, an Eidos game from back in the day. But, when I sit here in like gamer gear, like, you always have the sense, at least coming up in this space, that you're either invisible or a slut. Because that's the messages we see, or a bimbo or whatever. But that's the messages we take in. Anybody who's not the presumed audience, right? That's the messages we take in while we're watching everybody else fight. And I think that matters. Not to say, well, we should matter more than you, just to say we should matter too. But then I talk to these gamers who are really, really upset about this stuff. And part of the reason they're really upset is that these guys don't feel like they matter. They feel like these game directors are deliberately rubbing their noses in, we're going to give you something you don't like and say you're a bad person. And it was interesting because I said to somebody this week, I didn't get that sense at all. I got the sense that, at least in the Last of Us 2 case, Druckmann was trying to pass off his own FAP material as feminism. And then the reaction to the game was blaming feminism for Druckmann's FAP material. That is not the way fapping works. Just saying. Most people don't whack off to feminism. That's what gets him going. And he couldn't be honest about it. And personally, that's part of the reason I kind of embarrassed myself by being honest to a fault about a bunch of stuff, because I'm going to be honest about the things I find attractive that aren't typical. To give other people license to do it. But there's this thing where, oh no, we can't do that because then we're predators. Then we're evil, evil men. And the vast majority of women were not asking for that. That's something predominantly male games journalists pressured predominantly male game devs to do by the voice of one feminist that the predominantly male games journalism, predominantly male game devs decided was going to be the only voice for women they listened to. And the minute there was any other competing voice, they were like, eh. If you watch content aimed at women, okay, which is a lot of TV, you watch CW shows. There's plenty of women dressing to be seen. That one fierce outfit scene. Women want to have license to be sexy. We want a greater diversity of characters depicted sexy, allowed to be sexy. Yeah, but we don't have a problem with sexy. We just want to feel like, pardon the pun, we can come too. And this whole debate has really been a lot of shh, men are talking. And I know that's not the intent. And this is mainly for, the developers and the games journalists, but, a lot of them are on strike right now. Hey-oh. But so maybe they got time to watch videos. No, they're on a picket line. But this is mainly developers. I get that you're trying to help, but the message you're really setting is, shh, men are talking. Shh, this is for men. Shh, shh, shh. You don't agree with Anita Sarkeesian. Shh. That is how it's coming across. I'm just being completely fucking brutally honest right now. Because, and take Guerrilla Games, they didn't say anything political that way. And one commenter, and this is what I like about Horizon Forbidden West, but it's too subtle for the modern discourse. One commenter said, we could easily accept a weathered Aloy if we were given some context to the passage of time, but nothing told us if the game takes place 10 years or 10 days after the first game. That's not true. Characters who were babies in the first game are now walking around as, 8 to 10-year-olds. You see small animal life like foxes and rabbits and boars, like wild boars, wild pigs, which didn't exist in the first game because the terraforming technology has continued to spit things out, meaning substantial passage of time has happened. They do mark time in the game. It's just not, it is 10 years after the first game. They don't spoon feed it to you. They allow you to experience that through their environment, which I think is good game design. It's really not true that no one was told if the game takes place 10 years or 10 days after the first game. But also the actress that's the body model for Aloy is just, they had to rescan her because the increase in technology, the technological advancement in human like body scanning and rendering in Horizon Forbidden West is fucking phenomenal. So either they would have had to recast Hana, apparently her first name is pronounced Hoekstra. They would have had to recast her, or they got a scanner 8 years older than she was in the first game. She's going to be older. She's going to look older. And I wish people were more aware of what listeners, of what passive participants, passive observers in conversations pick up in sort of an are you all listening to yourselves kind of way. Because I know that the message I have been left with, and this is not me pissing and moaning, this is just me being honest, because I think it's important that people hear this stuff. Okay, if we're strong, we're mannish. If we're aggressive, we're mannish. If we're feminine, we're weak. Because, somebody said to me, men still can't wear skirts in society, so don't tell me gender expression is more limited for women. I said, yeah, but why? Women put on pantsuits to be more manly, more, but then it's got to be a pink pantsuit or something like that, or you get made fun of for being too mannish or whatever. It's like, why? Well, because it's considered feminine, weak, masculine, strong. And it used to be in games that if you wanted to make a woman seem physically aggressive, you gave her giant boobs. Well, they're not allowed to do that anymore. Because one woman's opinion was allowed to rule everything. They didn't do polls. They didn't do anything like that. It was that was the voice, and people like her. That's what people listen to. Why? I have no fucking idea. Pick up a woman's magazine, for God's sakes. That's not the dominant opinion. And it's certainly not the opinion of marketers. When I was making Lady Bits, I was told anything with woman in it, yeah, great, very marketable. Feminism, toxic. That's what I was told back when I made Lady Bits. That's why it's called Lady Bits. That's why it's called Lady Bits, and not, a feminist guide to gaming as opposed to a gamer's guide to feminism. That was the original title. I changed it because I was told feminism was toxic, and I believe that. So anybody who's not a man is in a bind. You have feminine signifiers, you're seen as weak or unserious. And not just signifiers, but behaviors, right? Speaking your mind, being aggressive, being like, rawr, you know? If you do that, you're mannish. And no, that is the message it's sent. And there's code, right? There's remember I talked about punitive norms a while back? There's not a team player, too aggressive, too interested in your own advancement. There's all these things. And ask any woman in game dev, any non-binary person in game dev, they have gotten this. Anybody in game dev who is not a man is an unman. It is still like that. And that is not the fault of gamers, who I do not believe supports this. This is a game dev problem. Getting the proper title for the job you do is a fight you usually lose. Getting paid what you're worth is a fight you usually lose. Because the men in positions of authority and the HR departments that back them up still have issues with manly characteristics coming from somebody who doesn't read as male to them. This is still a problem. Again, not a problem with gamers. Problem within the industry. Every major studio right now has had a gender inequality, sexual harassment, some sort of thing. Now, every single major one. I was waiting for it. I knew it was coming because I knew it happened. It happened to me. Like, I saw stuff at every single... I know the exact tone and tenor of the shit that happened in every single studio. And to be completely honest, to me, I saw things at Ubisoft that were grossly inappropriate, but it was the lesser of evils compared to EA and Activision. That doesn't make it right. Just saying. Just fucking saying. Right? And I think this matters because I can use this to understand... Instead of, I choose to use my experiences and my feeling of a raw wound that I just can't fucking win. Either I'm too mannish and I get punished for that, or I'm feminine and I get punished for that. You know, I'm taken less seriously like this in some ways that I am like this. And I know that. I know that. There's a reason I don't have push-up bras and a ton of cleavage. Okay, because YouTube was demonetizing me for the way my own body moved. True story. I did a video where I demonstrated realistic jiggle physics with my own body. I said jizzle physics. That might have been a Freudian slip. But YouTube smacked me down for it. My own body. YouTube doesn't let me choose fully clothed. Fully clothed. It was just the motion of the ocean. Right? I'm like, what? This is feminism? Seriously, a guy can get up there totally shirtless, like, you know, the man boobs, everything like that, gyrating. He can, because that's a guy. I can't. Fucking bullshit, but that's the world. And that's the lens I see these fights through. But now it's time to make a choice. I can choose to use that rawness with me as an excuse to ignore the complaints and pain of other people. Or I can use that as a window into relating to other people and their complaints. And, you know, I said to somebody whose opinion I respect a lot, I said, any workable solution is going to have to involve both the main viewpoints, you know, the men and everybody else in gaming. It's going to have to involve both of this because gaming needs to grow and it's saturated in men. It's going to come from, you know, the new customers are going to come from everybody else. That's just fact, but let's find a way for everybody to have fun because I am sorry, women are not offended by boobs. We're just really not. We quite like boobs. Like, we have them. We don't want to be ashamed of them. Like, for real. There are ways of doing this. But I choose to make that a bridge. I choose that to go, okay, I understand what it's like to feel really raw about this stuff, because I do. But this is where your systems of viewing the world come into play, right? Because if you're going systems of oppression or white, straight, cisgendered males are centered in society, well, you're going to go, no, you've had your turn, our turn now, power, outrage, checking my privilege. Social justice warriors coming through a lot this week. But like I said, that's not the reason that doesn't work is because that oppressor class feels pretty oppressed. They don't feel centered in society. They don't feel like society accepts them. And rightly or wrongly, accurately or not, that does not matter. If you're trying to communicate, if you're trying to get a common understanding, if you're trying to get things done, you can't alienate the people you're trying to talk to, right? So you're an oppressor class, out of the way. Doesn't work when culture is a donut. When no one feels centered, insisting that someone is centered in culture isn't going to work. That's not their experience. You cannot mind fuck and browbeat someone into truly believing their experience was something than other what it was. That's just gaslighting, right? And to me, that's the fundamental problem. Everybody's fighting each other because we're all sort of begging for scraps with the people that can do anything about this. And nobody's in charge anymore because the games press is striking right now. One person said on Twitch, this strike pretty much proves everything you've been saying about the games press and the sites that control it. It's like, yep, thank you for noticing. So the games press is just miserable and hates everything. Game developers are terrified of the games press. Gamers feel punished by game developers because game developers are terrified of the games press. And the games press just feels like they're subjected to nothing but abuse by the player base. It's just this cycle of shit. It's the circle of life, and it's different kinds of animal manure. We can do something about this. We can. We can start more productive dialogues. But what that means is admitting, first and foremost, that the existing paradigms, the existing discourse, the existing dialogues aren't working. They're not getting us anywhere. We need to try another way. So this is the point where I say, who's with me on trying another way? Maybe find common working points together instead of just howling in pain all the time. Maybe take some comfort from each other. The fact we're all sort of in a very similar boat. Instead of going, no, I have it worse. Let's not do that anymore, please. Let's not do that anymore. Like, really. Okay. Interested in your thoughts? Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. And coffee now. Link in the description box. Thanks for watching.